My girlfriend lied, cheated, and went on a vacation with her ex. Now, she's left stranded and I'm finally free. I'm 28, male, and I thought I had my life on track. I've got a decent job, live in a pretty good apartment, and until recently, I had a girlfriend, C, who I thought I was going to marry someday. We've been together for nearly 3 years. It wasn't perfect, no relationship is, but I was all in. I trusted her. At least, I used to, but something had been off for a few months. You ever get that gut feeling, the one that whispers, something's not right, but you don't have proof? Yeah, that's what I was feeling. C had started getting weird with her phone, keeping it close, tilting the screen away when she texted. She suddenly had all these work trips and girls' weekends, but when I asked for more details, she got defensive. I didn't want to push it too much at first. You try to be a good boyfriend, not one of those paranoid guys who constantly checks up on his girl. I convinced myself I was overthinking things, but still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I mean, we shared a joint bank account. We opened it together when we started saving for a house. If something was up, I figured it would show in the account. Then one day, I noticed it. $3,000. Gone in one withdrawal. No heads up. Nothing. I tried to stay calm. I wasn't going to jump to conclusions, so I brought it up casually. Hey babe, what's up with this $3,000 withdrawal? You buy something big? She didn't even look up from her phone. Oh yeah, I booked a girl's trip with M&T, she said, like it was no big deal. I stared at her, trying to keep my voice steady. A girl's trip? He didn't mention that. She rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed. I didn't think I needed to give you a play-by-play of my plans. That hit me like a slap to the face. I wasn't asking for her to report every little thing, but $3,000 was a big deal, especially when we were supposed to be saving for a house. It's just, that's a lot of money, see, and we're supposed to be saving, remember? Now she looked at me like I was the crazy one. We'll make it back. Relax, it's not the end of the world. The way she brushed it off just pissed me off, but I bit my tongue and let it slide. Maybe I was overreacting, I thought. Maybe she just needed a break, and I shouldn't be making it into a thing. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Something about it felt wrong. So I did something I've never done before in our entire relationship. I went through her phone. I wasn't proud of it, but sometimes you just know when someone's lying to you. And sure enough, there it was. A whole thread of texts, emails, and confirmations, flights, hotel bookings, everything. She wasn't going on a girl's trip. She was going on vacation with her ex. I sat there staring at the screen, my heart pounding. It wasn't just a few messages. This was planned. They'd been talking for weeks, setting up this whole thing behind my back. My stomach turned. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was the betrayal, the lies. I had trusted her, and she just threw it all away. I could have confronted her right then, but something inside me snapped. I wanted her to feel the same panic I was feeling. So I waited. I acted like everything was normal, like I didn't know a damn thing. I even kissed her goodbye when she left for her girls' trip the next morning, telling her to have fun. And as soon as she walked out that door, I went straight to my laptop and froze our joint bank account. I wasn't thinking about whether it was the right thing to do. I was hurt, and I wanted her to feel that hurt. If she was going to betray me like that, I was going to make sure she knew it wasn't going to go down quietly. Hours later, my phone rang. It was her. What the hell did you do? She screamed as soon as I picked up. I leaned back in my chair, trying to hide the satisfaction in my voice. What are you talking about? My card's getting declined. Everywhere. What did you do to the account? Oh, I froze it. Thought that was the least I could do after finding out you're on vacation with your ex, I said, keeping my voice cold and calm. Silence. There was just her breathing on the other end. And then came the bullshit. It's not what you think. Cut the crap, see? I read everything. The emails. The texts. You lied to me. You've been planning this for weeks. She stumbled over her words, still trying to scramble together some kind of excuse, but there was nothing she could say that would fix this. I didn't even let her finish. Why? I asked, my voice harder than I intended. Why would you do this? If you wanted to be with him, Why didn't you just leave me? I didn't want to hurt you, she started, and that's when I laughed. Actually laughed. It was cold, bitter, and it didn't sound like me. You didn't want to hurt me? So instead, you lie to me, steal our money, and go on a fucking vacation with your ex? That was your brilliant plan to not hurt me? There was a pause, and then her tone shifted. She dropped the guilt act and went straight to defense. You know what? Maybe if you weren't so fucking obsessed with saving for that stupid house, I wouldn't have had to do this. You've been so focused on the future. You forgot about me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was trying to flip this around. Make it my fault that she was sneaking off with her ex behind my back. What the hell are you talking about? You couldn't have talked to me? You couldn't have told me how you were feeling instead of lying to my face? She sighed, exasperated, like I was the one making this difficult. You just don't get it. I needed space. I needed time away to think. With him? You needed space for me with your ex? How the hell does that make sense? He's just a friend, she snapped. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep from losing it. Right, just a friend. That's why you had to lie about it. That's why you had to sneak around and hide this from me. She didn't say anything, and I could practically feel her thinking, trying to figure out how to twist this into something that made sense. But I wasn't having any of it. We're done, I said, finally breaking the silence. Wait, what? You're breaking up with me? Over this? You've got some nerve acting surprised, see? You lied. You used our money to go on a secret trip with your ex. What did you think was going to happen? You can't just leave me stranded here, she yelled, panic creeping into her voice. How am I supposed to get home? I felt nothing for her in that moment. No sympathy. No guilt. Just cold, hard reality. Not my problem, I said. You made your choices. Now deal with the consequences. I hung up before she could say another word. The days that followed were a blur. I moved out of the apartment, got my name off the lease, canceled all the bills I had in my name. I blocked her on everything. Phone, social media, email. I wasn't about to give her any more access to my life. I was done. A couple of weeks later, I found out she was telling people that I had abandoned her, that I had stranded her without a penny to her name. She was making herself out to be the victim, like I had just up and left her for no reason. The first time I heard about it from a mutual friend, I laughed. It was classic C. She always knew how to spin things to make herself look innocent, no matter how deep in the shit she was. But I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story. So I told my side. Everything. The lies. The ex. The money. Some people were shocked. Others, not so much. They knew her. They knew how manipulative she could be. Most people sided with me, but there were still a few who believed her sob story. Whatever. Let them. I wasn't about to waste any more energy on her or her drama. In the end, it hurt, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't the loss of her that stunned the most. It was realizing that the person I thought I knew never really existed. She had been wearing a mask the whole time, and I was just too blind to see it. But here's the thing. People will show you who they are, eventually. You just have to pay attention. And when they do, you can either ignore it, keep hoping they'll change, or you can do what I did. Walk away. I haven't heard much about C since. Last I knew, she was couch surfing at a friend's place because she couldn't afford rent after I left. Apparently, she tried to get the money back from the trip, but the flights and hotel were non-refundable. I guess that's what happens when you blow $3,000 on a lie. Part of me wonders if her ex even stuck around, or if she was left high and dry, just like she deserved. But honestly, I don't really care anymore. What I've learned from this whole mess is that you can't control what other people do. You can only control how you respond to it. And when someone shows you who they really are, when they lie, cheat, manipulate, you have to be willing to walk away, no matter how much it hurts at the time. Staying in something like that only destroys you in the long run. Sure, I'm pissed that I lost years of my life to her, but I'm more pissed at myself for ignoring the signs. The truth is, the writing was on the wall long before I found those texts. I just didn't want to see it. I kept telling myself she was better than that she wouldn't do something like this. But I was wrong. People don't change just because you want them to. And sometimes the only way to move forward is to cut them off completely. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.
It's just stuff. God, you're being so dramatic. It's just a room. My mother snapped. I blocked her number for good. On Thanksgiving, she tried to get me home. I spent 4 years busting my ass at college, working 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.8 GPA, all so I could make my family proud. I was the first one to get a degree. I thought coming home would feel like, well, coming home. Instead, I walked into a house where I no longer existed. The drive back had been filled with a weird mix of excitement and anxiety. 4 years of instant ramen, sleepless nights, and endless term papers had finally paid off. I had my psychology degree in one hand and a mountain of student debt in the other, but damn it, I'd done it. 22 years old, first in my family to graduate and ready to start the next chapter. The plan was simple: move back home temporarily, land a job in my field, save up for a few months, then get my own place. Mom knew I was coming. We talked about it for weeks. She'd even sent a half-hearted congrats text when I sent her pictures from graduation. No flowers, no card, no showing up to the ceremony despite my offering to help with gas money. But whatever, I'd stopped expecting grand gestures years ago. Looking back, the signs were all there, like neon warning lights I'd deliberately ignored. When I was 16, Mom took the $300 I'd saved from my summer job to buy my cousin Dylan a PlayStation because he was going through a rough time after his mom started dadding again. My college application fees, I worked extra shifts at Dairy Queen to cover those myself. When I got accepted to state with a partial scholarship, Mom barely looked up from her phone. But when Dylan got his GED after dropping out 3 years prior, she threw him a party and invited the whole family. I pulled into our cracked driveway that Thursday afternoon in May. Something felt off. The house looked the same: faded blue paint, crooked mailbox, my sister Lee's bike tossed on the front lawn. But something in my gut tightened. I grabbed my suitcase and the small box of graduation gifts from friends, feeling the humid air press against my skin. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside and called out, "Hello, I'm home." Lee appeared from the kitchen, now 16 and taller than when I'd last seen her at Christmas the year before. Her expression was strange, a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hey," she said, giving me an awkward half-hug. "You're back?" "Yep, finally done with exams forever. Where's Mom?" "At work, she'll be home around 6. Lee shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "So, how was the drive?" Something in her voice made my stomach drop, but I brushed it off. "Fine, just ready to crash in my own bed for once. Those dorm mattresses were killing my back." Her eyes darted away. Amber." But I was already heading down the hallway to my bedroom, dragging my suitcase behind me. The door that used to have my handmade Amber's Room sign now had a Batman poster taped to it. My hand froze on the doorknob. "What the hell?" I murmured, pushing the door open. The room that had once been mine, pale yellow walls covered with my honor roll certificates and favorite band posters, the twin bed with the purple comforter I'd saved up for, the desk where I'd studied for the SATs, was gone. Completely gone. The walls were now gray. A queen bed with rumpled dark sheets took up most of the space. Gaming equipment covered the desk. Clothes were strewn across the floor. And there, lounging on what should have been my bed, was my cousin Dylan, headset on, controller in hand, completely absorbed in his game. He glanced up briefly. "Oh, you're back." The blood rushed to my face. "What are you doing in my room?" He barely looked away from his screen. "It's not your room anymore, hasn't been for a while." My hands went numb, my ears started ringing. I backed out and stumbled down the hallway to the living room where Lee stood with her arms crossed over her chest, eyes on the floor. "Where's my stuff?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "What happened to my things?" The front door opened and there was Mom, looking exactly the same: bottle blonde hair, too much eyeliner, cigarette between her fingers. She started when she saw me, like she'd forgotten I was coming home today. "Oh, you're here," she said, dropping her purse on the coffee table. "I thought you weren't coming until tomorrow." "I told you I'd be here today," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Where's my room? Why is Dylan in there?" Mom waved her hand dismissively. "He needed a place to stay after Lisa moved in with that new boyfriend of hers. You don't live here anymore anyway." but all my stuff. We put some boxes in the basement, but most of it was just taking up space. I donated what you wouldn't need. She said it so casually, like she was telling me she'd picked up milk at the store. My chest felt like it was caving in. My yearbooks, my awards, my clothes. Oh, don't be dramatic, Amber, it's just stuff. You can get new things now that you're a college graduate. Anyway, you can sleep on the couch until you find your own place, it pulls out. At that moment, something inside me just broke. 22 years of trying to earn her love, and it took less than 5 minutes to realize I never had it and never would. I looked at my mother's face, no guilt, no shame, not even recognition that she'd done anything wrong, and I knew I couldn't stay. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just grabbed my car keys from where I'd set them on the side table. Amber, where are you going? Lee's voice was small, worried. I couldn't answer. If I opened my mouth, I'd either scream or sob, and I wasn't going to give my mother the satisfaction of either. I walked out the door, got in my car, and drove away. I drove aimlessly for almost an hour, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, my entire existence erased, like I'd never lived there at all, like I didn't matter. Reality set in quickly. I had maybe $800 in my bank account, not enough for a security deposit, let alone rent, not in this economy. I couldn't afford a hotel for more than a few nights, and I had exactly zero furniture to my name. I pulled into a Walmart parking lot and stared at my phone, then I thought of Nate. Nate and I had been neighbors growing up, inseparable until his family moved to the nicer part of town when we were 15. We'd stayed friends through high school and kept in loose touch during college. He'd been one of the few people to congratulate me when I posted about my graduation on Instagram. He answered on the third ring. Amber, hey, you back in town? Yeah, my voice cracked. I'm sorry to call out of the blue like this, but I'm in a situation and, are you okay? What's wrong? The genuine concern in his voice made my eyes burn with tears. I told him everything. When I finished, there was silence on the other end. Nate, I'm here, Jesus, that's messed up on so many levels. Look, I have a spare room, it's small, but it's yours for as long as you need it, no questions asked. Relief hit me so hard I almost dropped the phone. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. Get your ass over here, Brooks, I'll order pizza. I sat in Nate's driveway for 10 minutes before I could make myself knock on his door. The shame was overwhelming. I'd worked so hard to build something for myself, and here I was, homeless and begging for help barely a week after graduation. Nate opened the door before I could spiral further. He'd grown a beard since I'd last seen him, and he filled the doorframe in a way he hadn't in high school. Without a word, he pulled me into a hug. That was when I finally broke down, all the hurt, all the betrayal, all the years of trying to be good enough. It came pouring out in ugly, heaving sobs against his shoulder. He just held me there on his porch, not saying anything, letting me fall apart. Inside, the spare room was small but clean. A twin bed with fresh sheets, a nightstand with a lamp, a tiny closet. It wasn't much, but it was 1,000 times more consideration than my own mother had shown me. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of Nate's spare room, my phone lighting up with notifications. 6 missed calls from Mom, a dozen text messages escalating from casual curiosity about where I'd gone to angry demands that I stop being childish and come home. Around midnight, Lee texted, Dylan moved in 8 months ago. Mom told us not to tell you because it would just upset you for no reason. I'm sorry, Amber, I should have warned you. 8 months? While I was working double shifts and pulling all-nighters, they were erasing me from the house, from their lives, and they didn't even have the decency to tell me. I turned off my phone and finally let myself cry until there was nothing left. The next morning, I woke to the sound of someone pounding on the front door. Disoriented, I stumbled into the hallway just as Nate emerged from his room, hair disheveled from sleep. What the hell? He muttered, checking his phone. It's not even 8 a.m. We both froze when we heard the voice from the other side of the door. Amber, I know you're in there. Open this door right now. My mother, my stomach dropped to my feet. Nate looked at me, eyebrows raised in silent question. I shook my head frantically. The pounding continued. Amber Marie Brooks, you stop this nonsense right now and come home. You're embarrassing yourself and this family. Nate's face hardened. He strode to the door and yanked it open, positioning himself in the doorway so Mom couldn't push past him. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, his voice flat, "it's pretty early." My mother tried to look around him. "Where is she? Amber, stop being ridiculous and come home right now." I stepped into view, my whole body trembling but my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm not coming home." Mom's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean you're not coming home? Don't be stupid. Where else are you going to go? You have no money, no job." "And whose fault is that?" The words burst out of me, sharp and bitter. "I sent you money every month from my campus jobs. I worked 30 hours a week on top of full-time classes to help with bills. What happened to all that money, Mom? Did it go to Dylan's PlayStation Plus subscription, his new phone, the queen-sized bed that replaced mine?" Her face flushed. "Don't you take that tone with me, young lady. I put a roof over your head for 18 years, and the second I left you gave my room away and threw out my belongings, things I can never replace. My childhood photos, the medal from the state science fair, the blanket Grandma made me before she died." My voice cracked. "You threw away my entire life." "It's just stuff," she snapped. "God, you're being so dramatic. It's just a room, you weren't using it." For the first time facing my mother, I didn't hunch my shoulders or look away. It wasn't just a room, it was the last piece of home I had, and you didn't even have the decency to tell me you were giving it away. After everything I've sacrificed for you. "What exactly have you sacrificed, Mom? You didn't come to my graduation, you didn't help with college. You took the money I sent home and spent it on Dylan. You've spent my entire life making me feel like I wasn't good enough, wasn't important enough, wasn't worth the same love and attention you give everyone else." Something shifted in her face, not remorse, but the realization that her usual tactics weren't working. She switched strategies, her expression softening into a practiced look of concern. "Honey, I know you're upset, but this isn't the solution. Come home, we'll figure something out. Maybe Dylan can sleep on the couch for a few days while you look for a place." "No." The word was small but absolute. "I'm not coming back. I'll arrange to pick up whatever's left of my things. After that, we're done." Her face hardened again. "Fine, if that's how you want to be, you're just like your father, selfish, ungrateful, running away when things get tough." "Goodbye, Mom." I stepped back as Nate began to close the door. "This isn't over," she shouted as the door shut in her face. "You'll come crawling back, you always do." But I wouldn't. Something in me had broken yesterday, but today I realized it was the chains I'd put on myself. The desperate need for her approval, the belief that if I just tried harder, achieved more, she'd finally love me the way I deserved to be loved. The aftermath was predictably ugly. Mom launched a full campaign to paint me as the villain of our family drama. She posted vague, passive-aggressive prayers for my troubled daughter on Facebook. She called every relative who would listen, spinning a story about how I'd had some kind of mental breakdown after graduation and was lashing out at her for no reason. Flying monkeys descended. Aunts and uncles I barely talked to suddenly had very strong opinions about how I should be more understanding of my poor, hardworking mother, how family was everything, how I was being ungrateful. I blocked her number after the 15th guilt trip text. I unfriended the relatives who kept tagging me in their family is forever memes. I changed my privacy settings so Mom and her enablers couldn't see my posts. Only Lee maintained contact, though she had to do it secretly. At 16, she was stuck in that house for at least 2 more years. Our conversations were strained at first. She felt guilty for not warning me, and I was still raw from the betrayal, but we slowly rebuilt our relationship on new terms. "Dylan lost his job," she texted me one night 3 weeks after the incident. "Mom keeps saying you'll be back once you get over yourself. But you're not coming back, are you?" "No," I replied, "I'm not." Meanwhile, I threw myself into job hunting with desperate intensity. I applied to everything remotely related to my degree. I took personality tests, wrote cover letters, sat through awkward Zoom interviews with my one good blouse carefully positioned in frame. Nate was a godsend through all of it. He never made me feel like a burden, never rushed me to figure things out. He'd come home from his IT job with takeout and we'd eat on his couch, watching stupid movies and talking about everything except the gaping wound that was my family situation. The universe threw me a rare bone when a local mental health clinic called about my application. The pay wasn't great, barely above minimum wage, but it was in my field, had benefits, and offered tuition assistance for graduate studies. I accepted on the spot. 2 months after the incident, I signed a lease with a woman from work who needed a roommate after her last one moved out unexpectedly. The apartment was small, the neighborhood was okay but not great, and the commute was longer than ideal. But it was mine, a place where no one could erase me. Moving day was bittersweet. Nate helped me carry my pathetic collection of belongings, the suitcase I'd arrived with, plus a few boxes of essentials I'd purchased over the summer, into my new room. "You know you could have stayed longer," he said as we unloaded the last box. "I wasn't in any rush to kick you out. I know, but I needed to do this." I looked around the bare room, no decorations, just a mattress on the floor and a cheap dresser from Goodwill. I need to build something that's actually mine, something no one can take away. That night, alone in my new place, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "I've left the porch light on. The door is unlocked when you're ready to stop this foolishness and come home." I didn't respond. Instead, I took a photo of my new key in the lock of my apartment door and posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Home is what you build, not what you're given." Then I blocked her number for good. 6 months after the incident, Thanksgiving approached, bringing a fresh wave of anxiety. It would be the first major holiday since the incident. Mom had begun a new campaign to get me home, alternating between bribery, "I'm making your favorite sweet potato casserole," and guilt, "Lee misses you. How can you abandon your sister on Thanksgiving?" I was unmoved. Instead, I accepted an invitation to Friendsgiving at Nate's place. 2 days before Thanksgiving, there was a knock at my apartment door. I opened it to find Lee standing there, backpack over her shoulder, eyes red from crying. "Can I stay with you?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Just for a few days." I pulled her inside immediately. "What happened?" The story spilled out between sobs. Mom had been on a rampage about Thanksgiving, insisting it had to be perfect. She'd been drinking more than usual, taking her stress out on Lee. The final straw came when Lee mentioned she'd been texting me. "She went ballistic," Lee said, wiping her eyes, screaming about how I was betraying her, how I was choosing you over family. "She took my phone and read all our conversations, then she slapped me." Fury washed over me, hot, blinding, all-consuming. Mom had never hit us before. That was a line she hadn't crossed until now. "You're staying here," I said firmly. "We'll figure it out." The next day, Thanksgiving Eve, Mom showed up at my workplace. I was in the break room when the receptionist called, voice tight with discomfort. "There's a woman here insisting on seeing you, says she's your mother and it's an emergency." Ice filled my veins. "Tell her I'm with a client and can't be disturbed." But Mom wasn't taking no for an answer. By the time I gathered my things to leave through the back door, she had pushed her way into the reception area and was making a scene. "Where is she? Amber, I know you're here. Your sister is missing and it's your fault." I froze, then turned around and walked deliberately to the reception area. Several coworkers were staring as Mom continued her tirade. "Mom," I said, my voice low and controlled, "this is my workplace. You need to leave." She whirled on me, mascara streaked down her face from crocodile tears. "How dare you? Lee is gone and you have the nerve to." "Lee is safe," I interrupted. "She's staying with me." Mom's face contorted with rage. "You took her. You had no right. She's a minor. I'll call the police. I'll have you arrested for kidnapping." "She came to me after you hit her," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The reception area went deadly silent. "If anyone's calling the police, it should be her for child abuse." Mom blanched. "I never. She's lying." "Save it. We both know the truth. Now get out before I call security to escort you out." Mom looked wildly between us, realizing she'd lost her audience. Without another word, she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled in its frame. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel every eye on me, could sense the questions forming on their lips. My supervisor touched my arm gently. "Take the rest of the day, Amber, and tomorrow too, if you need it." That night, Lee and I talked for hours, really talked for the first time in years, about Mom, about our childhood, about the ways we'd both been shaped by her toxic love. "I always thought you were the lucky one," Lee confessed. "You got out, you went to college, you built a life without her." "And I always thought you were the lucky one," I replied. "You never had to fight for her attention the way I did." We laughed, a sad, knowing sound, two sides of the same damaged coin. On Thanksgiving Day, we went to Nate's parents' house. They welcomed Lee with the same warmth they'd always shown me. We ate too much, played board games, watched holiday movies. Not once did anyone pressure us to talk about Mom or what had happened. It was just normal, peaceful. A year after the incident, I barely recognized my own life. After careful documentation and consultation with a pro bono lawyer Nate's dad knew, Lee had successfully petitioned for emancipation from Mom. At 17, she was technically on her own, but in practice, she lived with me in our now shared apartment. I'd been promoted at work, moving from administrative support to a peer counselor position with a modest but meaningful raise. I'd started night classes toward a master's degree in clinical psychology, taking advantage of the clinic's tuition assistance program. Mom's attempts to contact us had gradually tapered off. The last we'd heard, Dylan had moved out after finding a job in another state, and Mom was dating some guy she'd met at a bar. She still posted occasional martyred comments on social media, but we'd both blocked her long ago. Lee was the one who suggested we do something to mark the anniversary, not to celebrate it, she clarified, but to acknowledge how far we've come to reclaim the day. So, on the exact date of the incident, we drove to the beach, a 2-hour trip that felt worth every minute when we saw the vastness of the ocean stretching before us. We sat on the sand as the sun began to set, the May air warm against our skin. "Do you ever miss her?" Lee asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. I miss the mother I should have had, the one who would have been proud of me at graduation, who would have helped me move into my dorm and cried when she said goodbye, who would have kept my room as a place I could always come back to. I dug my toes into the cooling sand. But the mother we actually had, no, I don't miss her at all. Lee nodded, understanding. I used to think there was something wrong with me for not feeling sad about cutting her off, like I was supposed to be more broken up about it. That's what they want you to think, that family is everything, no matter how toxic, that you're obligated to keep taking the poison just because you share blood. I watched a seagull dive into the waves. But we get to decide what family means to us. We get to build something better. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The room she'd erased wasn't my home anyway. I'd built something better, a life that was truly mine, one where I was valued, respected, and loved. Not because I'd earned it through achievement or obedience, but simply because I deserved it. Lee leaned against my shoulder, her weight solid and real. "Thanks for not leaving me behind." I wrapped an arm around her. "Never," I promised. "We're family, the real kind." She thought erasing my room would erase me. Instead, it freed me to become someone stronger than she ever allowed me to be. "We found him a better home," my parents said coldly after secretly selling my dog. I packed everything that night. 7 years later, they wanted to meet my daughter. I was 19 when I adopted Max, a golden retriever mix with sad eyes and ribs that showed through his dull coat. I still remember that day at the shelter, how he pressed against the chain-link fence, not barking like the others, just watching, hopping. His previous owners had dumped him after moving to a no-pets apartment complex. Their loss became my salvation. Back then, I was stumbling through my first year of community college, working nights at a 24-hour diner, and living in a shoebox apartment that smelled perpetually of the Chinese restaurant below. My parents had made it crystal clear they wouldn't be funding my reckless decision to skip a 4-year university. Independence was my middle finger to their controlling ways, even if it meant living on ramen and tips. Getting Max wasn't planned. I couldn't afford a dog. My landlord only allowed pets with an extra deposit I definitely couldn't spare. But when those brown eyes locked with mine at the shelter, something shifted inside me. I emptied my meager savings account, worked double shifts for weeks, and convinced my landlord to let me pay the pet deposit in installments. My parents were livid. "A dog? You can barely take care of yourself," my mother had spat over the phone. My father's voice had that familiar, disappointed tone. "This is exactly why we wanted you to live at home," one impulsive decision after another. But Max wasn't impulsive. He was necessary. He was the first thing that felt truly mine. Those first months we grew together. I taught him to sit, stay, shake. He taught me patience, routine, responsibility. When I'd come home exhausted from double shifts, his excitement made the fatigue worth it. On nights when the walls of my apartment seemed to close in, his warm body curled against mine kept the darkness at bay. He slept on my bed, ate whatever I could afford, and never once complained when dinner was late or walks were shortened because of my work schedule. Max gained weight, his coat grew shiny. The shelter dog with fearful eyes transformed into a confident, gentle companion who charmed everyone at the dog park. Even my crusty old landlord would slip him treats when I paid rent. Then Aunt Sarah got sick. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, Mom's only sister living 3 states away with no one else to help. Despite our strained relationship, family was family. When Mom called asking if I could fly out to help for 2 weeks while she arranged hospice care, I didn't hesitate, but Max was the complication. My friends lived in dorms. The boarding kennels wanted more per night than I made in 3 hours of waitressing. In desperation, I called my parents. Just for 2 weeks, I begged. I've written down all his routines, his food, his medicine for his ear infection. Please, I don't have anyone else to ask. Their reluctance was palpable, but they agreed. Dad picked us up, eyeing Max warily as he settled in the backseat, sensing my anxiety. I kissed his head goodbye, promised I'd be back soon, and boarded a plane with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. Those 2 weeks stretched into 3 as Aunt Sarah's condition worsened. I called daily, asking about Max. The updates grew increasingly vague. He's fine, eating well, no trouble. The evasiveness made my skin crawl, but what could I do? I was states away, watching my aunt fade while my mother crumbled under the strain. Then came the call that Aunt Sarah had passed. Another week for the funeral and settling affairs. By then, the knot in my stomach had transformed into full-blown panic. Dad's texts about Max had stopped entirely. I landed back home with my chest tight with anticipation. All I wanted was to bury my face in Max's fur, to feel his heartbeat against mine while I processed my grief. Dad picked me up at the airport, unusually quiet. No mention of Max, no anecdotes about his antics, nothing. When we pulled into their driveway, Mom was waiting on the porch, no golden shadow bouncing at her side. "Where's Max?" my voice cracked. The silence felt like a physical blow. "We found him a better home," Dad finally said, not meeting my eyes. "A family with kids and a yard. He needed more than you could give him." I couldn't process the words, couldn't breathe. "You sold my dog." "Rehomed," Mom corrected, as if the semantics mattered. "He was destructive, chewed furniture, barked constantly. The neighbors complained." Lies, all lies. Max wasn't destructive. He was trained. He was good. "Where is he?" I demanded, my voice barely recognizable. "Who has him?" "It's done," Dad snapped. "You're too young for this responsibility. We did you a favor." A favor? They called stealing and selling my dog, my family, a favor. I don't remember much of what followed. There was screaming, crying, accusations. I tore through their house looking for any sign of Max, any clue to where he might be. In Dad's home office I found it, a receipt tucked into his desk drawer. $300 and a name, Daniel Mercer, an address in the suburbs. I took it and walked out, ignoring their calls to be reasonable, to understand they'd acted in my best interest. Nothing they said mattered anymore. They weren't parents, they were thieves. The Mercers lived in one of those cookie-cutter developments with perfect lawns and matching mailboxes. A neighborhood I could never afford. I knocked, heart pounding, rehearsing what to say, what to do if they refused. A woman answered, puzzled at first, then horrified as I explained who I was, why I was there. Her husband joined her, equally uncomfortable as the story unfolded. "We had no idea," he said quietly. "Your parents said they were moving to a condo that didn't allow pets. They never mentioned." "Can I see him?" My voice broke. "Please, I just need to see him." They exchanged looks, then nodded. Mrs. Mercer called softly, "Apollo, come here, boy." Apollo. They'd even changed his name. But when he bounded around the corner, nothing else mattered. Max, my Max, stopped dead in his tracks. For one terrible moment, I feared he wouldn't recognize me. Then his entire body began to quiver, a whine building in his throat before erupting into joyful barking as he launched himself at me. I collapsed to my knees, burying my face in his fur as he frantically licked my face, his entire body wiggling with happiness. He remembered. He knew me. To their credit, the Mercers were decent people. When Mrs. Mercer's eyes filled with tears watching our reunion, I knew they'd grown to love him too. Their kids would be devastated. They'd paid honest money. But they also had humanity my parents lacked. They understood that some bonds can't be broken by convenience or cash. Take him, Mr. Mercer said finally. He's yours, always was. I tried to return their money. They refused. Instead, they helped me load Max's new bed and toys into my beat-up Honda, extracting only a promise that their kids could visit him sometimes. I agreed through tears of gratitude. That night, I packed everything I owned from my parents' house while Max watched, never letting me out of his sight. My father tried reasoning, then yelling, then bargaining. My mother cried, accused me of being ungrateful, dramatic, selfish. You had no right, I told them, voice steady despite the storm inside me. He wasn't yours to give away. I didn't go back to my apartment, couldn't risk them knowing where to find us. Instead, I couch surfed with friends until I found a pet-friendly room to rent across town. I worked doubles, triples, picked up odd jobs on my days off. Max ate before I did, always. Some nights, dinner was whatever the diner would let me take home at the end of my shift, or nothing at all, but we were together. The financial struggle was brutal. Pet deposits, vet bills for Max's ear infection that had worsened while I was gone, juggling work and classes, but every hardship was worth it when I'd wake to find him curled against me, his warmth a shield against the world. My parents tried reaching out. Calls, texts, cards with checks I tore up without cashing. Their apologies rang hollow, always circling back to how they'd been trying to help, how I was too young, too impulsive, too emotional. Never acknowledging the fundamental violation of trust, the casual cruelty of taking away the one being who loved me unconditionally. I blocked their numbers, changed my email, moved again when I could afford it. Life went on. Years passed. I graduated, found a job at a marketing firm, met Ryan at a dog park when Max, graying around the muzzle but still playful, decided Ryan's husky Luna was his new best friend. Ryan understood about Max, about the invisible tether between us. He'd rescued Luna from a neglectful situation. He got it. When we moved in together, Max claimed his spot on our bed without hesitation. When we married 2 years later, he wore a bow tie and carried our rings down the aisle. And when our daughter Lily was born, he appointed himself her guardian, sleeping beside her crib, gently nudging us awake when she cried before we even heard the monitor. I hadn't spoken to my parents in almost 7 years when the Facebook message arrived. Mom had found me through a mutual friend, discovered she had a granddaughter she'd never met. The message oozed with manipulative nostalgia, how much they missed me, how they'd changed, how families should stick together. Not one word about Max. Ryan found me staring at the screen, hands shaking. You don't owe them anything, he said quietly, but whatever you decide, I'm with you. Lily was 8 months old. Max was 10, slowing down, his muzzle fully silver. The past felt simultaneously distant and raw, like a wound scabbed over but still tender to the touch. I agreed to meet them once in a public place without Lily. Ryan came with me, a silent support as we waited at the coffee shop. Max stayed home, blissfully unaware that the people who had discarded him were about to re-enter our orbit. They looked older. Dad's hair had thinned, Mom's had grayed. They hugged me awkwardly, tried to hug Ryan, who stepped back with a polite nod instead. We ordered coffee, made small talk about the weather, my job, their retirement plans, danced around the 7-year gap like it was a minor scheduling conflict rather than a deliberate excision. Then Mom pulled out her phone, showing pictures of her friends' grandchildren. We've missed so much of Lily's life already, she sighed, voice thick with manufactured emotion. When can we meet her? That depends, I said evenly, on whether you can acknowledge what you did. Dad shifted uncomfortably. That was so long ago, we made a mistake, we're sorry, can't we move forward? A mistake? The word tasted bitter. You sold my dog while I was helping take care of your dying sister. You lied about it. You never once in 7 years actually apologized without making excuses. We thought, Mom began, but I cut her off. If you can't even say it, how can I trust you with my daughter? Silence stretched between us, heavy with unsaid words. Finally, Dad leaned forward, his face flushed. Fine, we sold your dog. We did it because we were angry you moved out, angry you were making it on your own without our help. We wanted to teach you a lesson about responsibility, about consequences. It wasn't about the dog being destructive. It was about showing you that we still had control. The admission hit like a slap, even though I'd always suspected it. 7 years of distance, and they still couldn't see how twisted their logic had been. His name is Max, I said quietly. He's 10 now, he sleeps at the foot of Lily's crib every night, he's the reason I met my husband. He's the reason I learned what real love looks like, the kind without conditions or control, and you almost took that from me." Mom was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. Dad stared at his coffee cup like it held answers. "I'll send you photos of Lily," I continued. "Once a month. If that goes well, maybe we can schedule a video call in a few months, but you don't get to pretend the past didn't happen. You don't get to play loving grandparents without earning back my trust." They agreed, desperate for any connection. I didn't tell them that Max was slowing down, that the vet had found a mass during his last checkup, some truths they hadn't earned the right to share. The photos turned to video calls, the video calls to brief, supervised visits. Each time they brought gifts for Lily, tried to buy her affection the way they'd once tried to buy mine. Each time I reminded them of our boundaries. Ryan watched them like a hawk, never fully warming to the people who had caused so much pain. Then came the day Max couldn't get up from his bed. His back legs, once strong enough to leap into my arms, now trembled with the effort of standing. The vet confirmed what we already knew: the cancer had spread. There were treatments that might buy time, but they would only postpone the inevitable while possibly causing suffering. We brought him home for one last perfect day. Burgers from his favorite drive-thru, a slow walk to the park where he'd first met Luna, hours of gentle pets and whispered gratitude for all he'd given us. Lily, not quite two, sensed something was different, patting his head with unusual gentleness, sharing her favorite stuffed animal. That evening, the vet came to our home. Max went peacefully, his head in my lap, Ryan's hand on his flank, surrounded by love and dignity, the exact opposite of how my parents had discarded him years before. I couldn't bring myself to post about his passing on social media, couldn't bear the platitudes from people who didn't understand what he'd meant to me. But I needed my parents to know, needed them to face what they'd done, what they'd nearly stolen from me. I invited them over, something I'd never done before. They arrived excited, bearing gifts for Lily, expecting another step toward reconciliation. Instead, they found our home somber, photos of Max displayed on every surface, his collar resting on the mantel. "Max passed away yesterday," I said without preamble. "I thought you should know." The color drained from Mom's face. Dad stood frozen, the gift bag dangling forgotten from his fingers. "I'm so sorry," Mom whispered, reaching for my hand. I let her take it, feeling nothing. "Do you know what keeps going through my head?" I asked quietly. "That you almost took away 10 years with him, 10 years of love, of growth, of family. You almost made it so I never saw him grow old, never got to say goodbye, never got to hold him at the end." Dad sank heavily onto our couch. "Jenny, no, I need you to hear this. You didn't just sell my dog, you tried to sell my family, my heart, and now I need you to look at these pictures and see exactly what you almost stole from me." I showed them Max as best man at our wedding, Max gently licking newborn Lily's feet, Max teaching Luna to play fetch, Max sleeping beside me through college all-nighters, Max's gray muzzle resting on my pregnant belly, a life, a history, a love story they'd tried to end for spite. "We didn't understand," Mom said, tears streaming down her face. "He was just a dog to us. And that's why I'll never fully trust you," I replied. "Because anyone who can say just a dog is someone who doesn't understand love without conditions." We sat in silence after that, the weight of everything said and unsaid filling the room. Eventually, Lily toddled in, breaking the tension as only a child can. I let my parents stay for dinner. Let them play with their granddaughter, but something fundamental had shifted. In acknowledging Max's death, they finally had to face the reality of what they'd done, not just to a dog but to me, to trust, to family. We maintain contact now, limited visits, holidays, brief calls. They've learned not to push boundaries, learned that access to my life and my daughter is a privilege they nearly lost permanently, not a right they're entitled to. They send birthday cards to Lily and remember the anniversary of Max's passing with respectful texts. It's not forgiveness exactly, but it's recognition, acknowledgement. And in the end, that's all I really wanted, for them to see the enormity of what they'd done and to live with that knowledge the way I'd had to live with the almost loss of it. Last year we adopted another rescue, a scruffy terrier mix Lily named Captain. He sleeps where Max once slept, loves as Max once loved. Different but the same in all the ways that matter. When my parents visit, they're careful with him, respectful of his place in our home. They've learned, finally, that family isn't just blood. Sometimes it's fur and paws and unconditional love. And sometimes it's making people face their worst actions not for revenge but for truth. Because without truth, there can be no real healing. Without accountability, there can be no genuine connection. Max taught me that, and for that lesson alone, I'll be forever grateful that I found him that day at the shelter, and even more grateful that I found him again when the world tried to tear us apart.